Why, hello, Allison. Fancy meeting you here.
How you doing today, Jeff?
Pretty well, thank you. Pretty well. Uh, well, just to let, you know, but let the audience know that we're here for our presentation or our class, if you would like to call it, on Heilkunst health strategies during the lockdown. And I will go to our slides in just a moment, but I do want to explain a little bit of we're doing a little bit of an unusual format today as far as the fee. Normally we would charge a fee for the class. In this case, given the worldwide economic situation, we decided to go on a donation basis because we know the economics have changed for so many people, their lives have changed, and we do want this class to be available for everyone, regardless of ability to make a donation or not. But if, as I know a lot of us still are relatively in a similar financial place, a stable place, we have that link. I just put it up on the bottom of the screen at our website, arcanum.ca/lockdown. But as I say, if you are not able to, to make a donation for this class, don't feel badly, don't leave, just please benefit from the information. We want it available to everyone. So I just wanted to explain a little bit why we changed the format for our class, but I will get ready for our slides now. Just give me a second. There's some buttons to push here.
I'm so excited to see people writing on the side and saying hello, and it's so awesome. Some of you, we've not been in contact for many, many years, and so I love the chance that we get today to reconnect with you. It makes my heart very full, especially during this pandemic, because contact with our beloved friends, colleagues, and even some patients have been quite limited. So thank you so much for writing and attending today.
Mm-hmm. It is, and it's kind of interesting. I mean, here we are in this house arrest situation worldwide, but yet we can see all our friends online. So at least there's something. I mean,
Yeah,
it's certainly not everything, but it's something. So let
it's
me,
awesome.
I'm going to turn to our slideshow, and please feel free to put your questions in the comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. It works the same way. You can just type your question there, and I don't know if definitely at the end I'll come back and check the questions, and perhaps periodically through the presentation I may check. We'll see how things are flowing, but just so you know, your question won't be lost, and we will see it sooner than later. Okay, so let me switch the screen over here. Maybe actually, speaking of typing your comments, if anyone could just type some kind of yes or confirmation that they're seeing the slides on the screen now. It says Heilkunst Health Strategies. There's a little clothespin, little character just hanging out there.
He's adorable.
Actually, I guess I need to wait maybe 20 or 30 seconds. I know there's a delay between when we talk and then when the audience hears it. Okay, so yes, we are getting a confirmation. And okay, so here we are. Actually, let me have one more thing to switch on my screen. But Allison, do you want to give any kind of overview comments or any general thought you have going into, aside from any of the details, but any general thought before we get into it?
Well, I'd like to speak a little bit to what's been going on behind the scenes with regards to our own research. And of course, in times like this, it's even for us Heilkunst physicians, we're mystified, confused, just like everybody else, we react the same way. And of course, the second thought is, oh my gosh, how do we support our beloved patients through this process? And medically, what is it that we need to do in order to make sure that the curative principles are apply in a time like this when we're not always exactly sure what's transpiring. So an enormous amount of research, just so you know, 100 of us colleagues have been working diligently behind the scenes to make sure that we have everything in our toolbox to be able to support, nurture, detox, and provide medicine homeopathically to our patients. So just so you know, we have a lot of that to share with you today, and we're really excited about that. It is an exciting time in some ways for some of us when we actually figure out what the heck is going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, good to hear all that, Allison. I thought I was the only one losing my mind some days. So. It's, of course, a little bit of a joke. It's no secret as to what's going on in your spouse's world. But, okay, and actually, thank you for that, Allison. And that's actually a good lead-in to the first slide I thought of for this presentation. If you've seen any of my recent videos, I've actually used this slide a couple of times, and there's a good reason for that. But on the tail of what you just said, Allison, it's amidst all the confusion and everything changing and all the questions and everything going on, I realize I get tremendous comfort when I can actually go back to something that's solid as far as the basic laws of nature, the basic structure of Heilkunst, and how the treatment works, how the remedies work, how all the principles work. Those don't change. As I say, the world can kind of be turned upside down and all the stuff we're going through right now. But how we respond to remedies, how we respond to other therapeutics, how we respond to even basic ideas, how ideas affect us, how the truth affects us, goes back to the very basic principles of Heilkunst. And very, very, very brief recap of what's on this slide. I'll just remind anyone, or maybe if you're kind of learning this for the first time, there are 3 and only 3 jurisdictions in the whole therapeutic framework of Heilkunst. And it's not just Heilkunst that has these concepts. I mean, Heilkunst is pretty much the only place that consciously expresses these concepts. But it's whether you're going for massage, whether you're going to see your MD, whether you're going to a naturopath, whatever kind of therapy you're involved in, of course, home remedies and Google research, whatever the health situation is, it will fit into at least one of these 3 jurisdictions and no more. We're not going to discover a 4th jurisdiction tomorrow. It's just these 3. So the first one is therapeutic regimen. That has to do with the realm of balance. And actually, Allison, I'm just going to mute you for a second. I think is that the dog you have in the background?
Yeah.
I'm going to mute your mic, but don't forget to unmute yourself when you're going to go talk. So as I was saying, the first realm of therapeutic regimen is the realm of balance or imbalance, and the basic principle there is the law of opposites, right? If you have too much of something, you need to take some away. Or if you have a deficiency in something, you need to add more. So the classic example, back before vitamin C was readily available year-round, scurvy used to be a big medical problem. So that was a vitamin C deficiency. So in that case, all you need to do is give someone enough vitamin C, and they will resolve that health problem. So that's the therapeutic regimen. The second area of therapeutic medicine is what we spend a lot of our days with, a lot of our time with patients in clinic, is around homeopathic medicines. And that's what we mean by therapeutic medicine. We're talking about the law of similars, like cures like, giving the homeopathic remedies for certain symptoms. Of course, we do a lot of treatment of timeline events. We get into the chronic miasms and the genetic diseases. So all of that and more, other things, fall into that realm of therapeutic medicine, where we use, as I said, the law of similars or like cures like, and we can actually cure a disease that's going on at a certain level in the person's organism. And the final of the 3 jurisdictions is the therapeutic education. And that is, in a sense, I find the most difficult area to summarize. It's a very vast area, but ultimately, it's really about the whole issue of how, as an individual, as a person, of course, as a family, as a community, and the whole realm of human activity, how are we engaged with the truth? And I know that sounds like a bit of a loaded question in a way, but it's absolutely foundational to what's going on in our health, the kinds of diseases and other health issues that can develop if we're living outside of truth. And to put it simply, that can be as simple as are you living in true relationships with your spouse, with your family, with your community, with the people around you. Are you doing the right work? Are you, or as opposed to, are you doing a job that you feel you have to do because that's what your parents paid for you to go to university or something like that, but you kind of let your dreams dry up, rather than pursuing them. So anyways, I'm just giving a couple of examples, but this is truly a very, very vast area, and we can probably do many, many weeks worth of presentations just on introducing that area. So I'm going to leave it at that, but there we go. I'm going to turn Allison's microphone back on, unless it already is. And yeah, and that's, as I say, just to give us an overview, everything we talk about today, and you can test us if you think we've strayed into some made up fourth jurisdiction of health that we seem to be making up. You can call us on that, but I can pretty much guarantee we're not going to stray outside of the 3 jurisdictions. That's pretty rock solid foundational for us. So yeah, so there we are. So that's my intro, and let me, Allison, I will turn it over to you if you want to launch into the first slide on water intake, and of course I'll comment as you're going through the points as well.
With pleasure. Thank you, Jeff. So with regards to regimen, we know that there are 4 cardinal points in regimen, being water, diet, sleep, and recreation. Recreation also has exercise and just fun, playing. And part of the whole aspect of water is that we need a clean source. And that clean source often is difficult if you're living in a big city or near farms where there's runoff from pollutants and chemicals sprayed on crops and that kind of thing. And so really people have had to be very resourceful over time in order to access a clean source. You think this would be something that would just be available to everybody, and actually should be on the planet. So in our realm, the best thing to really look for is pH balanced water. And a lot of people are using filters from home, making sure that their wells are properly tested. Sometimes comes back with, heavy metals. And in drainage and organ support droppers, and we'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation, is that we have had to customize over time medically in the medicine jurisdiction in order to help people really cope with what it is they have specific in their realm. So for example, there sometimes are higher levels of arsenicum or arsenic in their water, and we will give a drainage and organ support dropper that helps to detox from that regularly. Bottled water sometimes has to be what we do. It's not the ideal source. Hydrogen water also has been proven to be more positive over time for our health. So the idea being is to avoid tap water that contains fluoride, chlorine, estriadol, because a lot of people may not realize, but what's being urinated out in a large city actually shows up in the water supply. Estriadol comes from the birth control pill, and what we're finding in our young males, to be candid, is really estriols or estrogen showing up in their bodies in higher levels than ever before, which is very concerning because it's producing, breast tissue. The testes will shrink. We're seeing a lot of infertility in many cases as a result of this. So ACE inhibitors, traces of lead, antibiotics, antidepressants, beta blockers, all of these things are very concerning in the water supply. When we used to live in the city in Ottawa, we would drive up to a place in Chelsea, Quebec, that was a stream coming out of an artesian well, very deep in the earth. And we would actually fill up glass water bottles and bring them back to our home. The unfortunate thing where we live here in Mexico, we actually have to be on, water bottles from trusted sources, but it's not the ideal. When we get back to Canada in the summer, we live on a mountain in New Brunswick in the middle of nowhere, and we have fresh water right out of the tap, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So try and avoid distilled and reverse osmosis water, which is stripped of minerals. Now, if you have to use that source, we recommend using Soleil brine. And again, you can look at the Soleil brine blog right on arcanum.ca, and that will explain a little bit about how we use Soleil, which is Himalayan salt, really not just to provide the 88 minerals that our bodies need from the earth that we access in our bodies all of the time. But the other thing too is that it's very neutralizing. So people that have pH issues can be very much helped by Soleil brine.
Hmm. Actually, thanks for reminding me about that, Elson. I'm just going to put the link to our post on that right in the comments here. It's actually it's easy and straightforward to do once you understand how to do it. But yeah, so let me. Sorry, I'm just flipping through a few screens here. You don't see that in the, me doing that in the background, but yeah, just I put that link up, and you'll be able to, if you don't know how already, how to make that Soleil brine at home. It's one of the easiest, inexpensive, but very powerful things you can do for your health in general, but very specifically related to the water intake. And actually, speaking of, I don't think we put this in any of the slides. This is a thought I'm just having as I was listening to you, Alison, is, yeah, we have such a foundational basis in water and hydration as far as our health goes. And the Soleil brine is a very powerful tool, as I just said. But the other thing that I'm thinking about is something called sequential eating. You know, you're used to us using the word sequential when we talk about treating the timeline. You know, we talk about sequential timeline therapy with the homeopathic medicines. But even before we get to medicines, we do something called sequential eating. And with that, the basic idea of that, it relates to water very much. It has to do with, the word sequence has to do with when you have a meal, or really the spread over the whole day, you want to have the more watery things earlier and the more solid, dense things later. So if you think of the traditional sequence, when you go to a restaurant, you know, the traditional meal sequence, you know, first they take your drink order, that's highly liquid, right? Then they take your order for an appetizer, that's usually like a soup or a salad, you know, again, something with a high liquid content. And then you get into the meal itself. You know, the entree has typically the more dense foods, you know, the dense protein sources and the other dense kind of solid foods we eat during the meal. And then and again, well, there's no then, and then, you know, that ideally should be the end. Of course, we then go on into dessert and other things afterward. That tends to disrupt the sequence a little bit. You can get into less dense things for dessert. So strictly speaking, you know, you're kind of falling out of sequential eating at that point. But the basic idea, if you do follow it, and I could have added at the beginning, you know, have a good glass or two of water like 20 minutes before your meal, so that you're kind of priming all your digestive juices. And that, as I say, that whole idea of sequential eating is, in my mind, it's part of the idea of hydration, because it's not just talking about how many glasses of water you drink a day, but how do you structure your day so you're maximizing how much water you're getting at those kind of optimal digestive times, right? When you don't have other things digesting in your stomach. And anyways, it just makes a mess of everything the more you break up that sequence. So okay, here we are. So Alison, do you want to jump back in on this slide?
Sure. So nutritional tips that we recommend if we don't have a person's blood type. So this is really important because we work on the basis of typology. As you may know, in allopathic medicine, they'll say, oh, don't eat meat or restrict your salt. And it's like, oh, wait a second. You know, we're all individuals. And what we know from 70 years of research of Dr. D'Adamo and his father, who is also a scientist and physician, is that eat right for your blood type is the most resonant form of consuming foods that actually can be metabolized and digested well by your body. We've also backed this up with about 30 years of live blood analysis because we just wanted to check if Dr. D'Ademo's research was spot on. And Jeff and I have been in practice for almost 20 years now, and we can tell you, after serving hundreds of patients, thousands of patients around the world, that it is valid and spot on. So before you even come to start working with us, and you'll know if you have spent time working with us, that is really the go-to for a relatively healthy patient. We have other adrenal supports, endocrine supports, if somebody's been kind of out of whack for a long period of time. But we're not going to get into this as that goes beyond the scope of our talk today. But again, for basic nutritional tips, drink lots of water, avoid sugar, carbohydrates, refined flours. In some cases, very harmful, for example, for an O blood type to be drinking coffee. That will actually destroy their adrenals. And stay on point as much as you possibly can with your blood type, eating right for your blood type. This is the first thing when you contact our clinic that we actually will recommend. Have 2 weeks of non-perishables stored away. We're expecting in the next week or two that there may be a bit of an outage for 3 to 5 days, which means that we lovingly want to actually tell you to store food, non-perishables, and water in your home. Canadian and American websites will recommend 2 weeks. So just to be, don't you love Mexico, Jeff? Like when you're talking, there's always a chihuahua barking or a birdie tweeting outside the window or somebody yelling down the Cajon. So yeah, just to make sure that out of love and self-care, just make sure that you have that on board just in case for whatever reason, pandemics, declared state of emergencies, those kinds of things. So that's always good advice, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. I don't think I have anything special to add. Of course, nutrition is a topic that we could spend all day on, but no, I think you've given the basics very well there. So what do we have? Oh, yes. Well, once again, I'll turn this back to you if you want to talk about these supplements. They're pretty basic, I suppose, but if you have any special comments, Alison, on any of these.
Yeah, so with regards to suggested supplements, this is something that we do on an individual basis for sure. But during a time like this, the idea being is that we really want to build up our system to make sure that it actually has all its resources to face, the COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 as it otherwise is known. Vitamin A, so cod liver oil and 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams. People always say, "Oh, what brand do you recommend?" Well, we look for a trusted source, so that's never what we find in a pharmacy. That we will order online ourselves. We will also go to a health food store when it's available to get our sources, and so we don't engage in like multi-level marketing really constructs. We actually ourselves will choose a trusted source that's on sale because that's just who we are. Vitamin B is really important when you're under stress. Vitamin C is critical. And what we know is that some hospitals now are actually using vitamin C to successfully treat COVID patients. Vitamin D is really important and critical. So get out in the sun for at least 20 minutes a day. Again, if you're not able to do that, which would equal about 400 IUs of vitamin D, then the idea being is that you'd have to supplement. So we're Canadian and we always have supplemented in the wintertime. Thank goodness we're getting back into spring now because vitamin D is more readily available naturally. Vitamin E for repairing any tissue damage, and zinc, which is actually really important for your immune function. In some cases, where we're seeing 5G starting to be installed in some larger cities, we recommend nascent iodine to support the thyroid, kelp, and Brazil nuts, which is a high level of selenium. Selenium is really important, and a lot of people are actually taking selenium on its own. And if you don't know, it's because it actually helps to absorb the iodine and kelp in the thyroid. You can take a selenium supplement. It's just that cost-wise and natural-wise, we try to actually use natural or food sources as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. That's, I mean, I'll just amplify that point. I don't know that I'm going to add much to what you just said, Alison, but yeah, the thing about naturally sourced vitamins, you know, whole foods and organic foods and, you know, really, really nutrient dense foods, of course, that's kind of the high, you know, the high benchmark of what we're looking for in nutrition now, given our, you know, our challenges in our modern world as far as, you know, how food is grown and what the nutritional sources are like these days, given the, you know, the other toxins, the stresses in our life, all these kinds of things. We you know, this is where the word supplement comes from, right? It's, you're supplementing what kind of should be there more or less in the diet, but of course, you know, the modern world being what it is, you know, there is a role for supplements, but as I say, that principle needs to be kept in mind, which you just highlighted, Alison, that yeah, ideally we're trying to source those natural whole foods, which are just jam-packed with nutrition. But as I say, you know, the pollution and everything else being what it is, then yes, we do. So this is why we turn to supplements. So the main point here, of course, being don't replace your good healthy diet with a bowl full of pills every morning. Of course, that's not quite so the way we want to go. But as I say, certainly they do make for good adjuncts to what we should already have as far as a nutritional baseline.
Well said. And we know from doing live blood analysis with patients, like I say, we have those results, you know, through our study for about 30 years, is that people will show up and they look like walking vitamins because of all the supplements they take. But if you take those supplements away, which has been done through live blood analysis, you see that the person actually is quite crashed with regards to their endocrine or adrenal system, their thyroid. You want to make sure that you are vitally healthy at your source, and that you are right, Jeff, that you are just supplementing and not buoying up your life force in a false construct.
Mm-hmm. And actually, thank you, Alison. You just reminded me, by the way you said that, you know, if we think back to this earlier slide on the 3 jurisdictions, there's kind of a good point in there as far as the nutrition we're talking about. And when you, Alison, just mentioned the live blood, you reminded me that, you know, that's a very interesting thing we've seen feedback in patients as far as their live blood analysis goes, which is that, you know, they kind of, you know, they use supplements to such a degree in their life that it actually, you know, yes, you know, at a base level, they're getting some nutrition out of that, but at another level, because of the way they're overdriving the supplements, it actually becomes a mechanism for suppressing other issues in their life, you know, other emotional issues, things like that. So that's where, you know, if we think back to those 3 jurisdictions I introduced at the beginning, that's where, you know, the attempt there that's happening there is to use regimen to, you know, for something that actually should be addressed at one of the other 2 levels, either the medicine jurisdiction or the education jurisdiction. You know, things that aren't being addressed at that level are kind of being kind of carpeted over with that excessive amount of supplementation. So that's, anyways, just to say that yes, there's lots of good we can get from the supplements, you know, in the purpose we're talking about, but there's a dark side as well that a lot of people don't have much awareness about. They don't realize they're necessarily they're doing something very suppressive for themselves, you know, depending on how they're using their supplements. Okay, so, oh yeah, so this is a fun slide. So Alison, maybe I'll start into this. I don't mean to keep putting you on the spot for every slide.
We're good.
But yeah, the basic, you have some nice things outlined here. You know, the slow burn and the actually you don't, you have some different cardio here, but I'm going to actually spell out a principle behind some of the cardio. But yeah, you do have the slow burn here. That's one of the main forms of exercise we're looking at. Of course, that's a form of strength training or weight bearing exercises. And the fascinating, I was never like a weight guy. I never liked going to the gym for pumping iron, and that wasn't my thing. I liked cardio and all other kinds of exercise personally. But when I was introduced to slow burn, it was a total like revolutionary thing in my life personally, and it's an amazing way of doing it because it's very I'm not on screen right now, and even if I was, it's kind of hard to show on this little tiny screen. But it's basically, we all know what weight bearing exercise looks like, pumping iron at the gym and everything. But the name slow burn has to do with extremely slow movement. Where the arm or the leg, whatever exercise you're doing, you just do those reps in a super, like you're watching a slow motion replay of the latest sports game or whatever. It's like super slow. Like, so your arm could be going from your down at hip level all the way up to your shoulder over like a 12 or 15 or even 20-second slow time frame, and then that same slow time frame to bring it all the way back down. So that one rep, it takes like half a minute or something like that for you to do one rep. Usually we see people doing reps really at a high velocity, which is kind of dangerous. You can actually injure yourself a lot more. But the slow burn, you do these very slow reps, and you can only do about 3, maybe 4 reps of each given exercise before you bring the muscle to a point of complete exhaustion. And that's or what's called muscle fatigue. And that's actually a good thing. That's the point of that exercise, where you can basically burn through all the muscle energy and all the different muscle fibers through 3 different layers of the muscle. And that's, as I said, that's good. It's not just good for the muscle, it's actually good for your immune system. It's good for everything. Like, it's good for your hormones. It's just such, it's not about like becoming a big super pumped up bodybuilder. You can go into a competition or something like that, but it's more about toning, as I just said, your immune system and your whole system. It's super powerful form of exercise. As I just said, it's safer. It's actually, I love doing it, as I said, personally. It's just, just at the end of it, I just feel this whole body kind of warmth. And I feel there's the burn part, right? When you've had all that muscle burning to its ultimate fatigue point, it's really, as I say, you just feel it over your whole body. So I really love that a lot. And then I will take, Alison, you've on the slide, you've put some of the examples of cardio, like jumping rope, and actually, I guess that's your only cardio example. My eyes are just kind of catching all the points here, but yeah, the jump rope, or really any form of cardio, kind of in counterpoint to the slow burn, we do something either that has different names. You can either call it pace, or you can talk about what's the other name of it? Interval training. So when people, whether it's running, whether it's cycling, the whole idea is of these forms, pace or interval training. I think there's another name I'm not thinking of at the moment. And the whole idea of that for cardio is that you're doing these really intensive bursts of exercise, like whether that's jump rope or you pick your favorite. You're doing like 30 seconds of as fast and as intense as you can go, right? It's like, if your thing is running or jogging, you are running as fast as you can, as if you're being chased by a bear or something like that, right? So you're going full out. And then after that 30 seconds, then you do 90 seconds of a very slow pace. So if the exercise is running or jogging, after your 30 seconds of intense, then you're doing 90 seconds of pretty much like a walk, like even a slow walk. You're just kind of getting yourself into a whole different rhythm. And then overall, you do 8 reps. 30 seconds intense, 90 seconds relaxed. You repeat all that 8 times, and 5 minutes of warm up or so at the beginning, 5 minutes of cool down at the end, and in less than 30 minutes, you've really maxed out the benefit you can get from cardio. You don't need to do a 1 hour, dancercise class, or 1 hour, jogging, or 1 hour of any cardio. Just that 20 to 25 minutes of this pace, a couple times a week, and you are going to get the maximum benefit you can get from cardio without going overboard, without doing too much. That's back to the jurisdiction number 1. We want to get enough of things, but not too little and not too much. So exercise is an area where people can tend to do too much sometimes. Well, as much as there are couch potatoes doing too little, there are also people doing too much. So we want to balance that out. So now, Alison, you have some other nice examples here. You talked about the yoga, and that's kind of the third pillar of, we talked about strength training, we talked about the cardio, the yoga and meditation, other kind of quiet introverted things. That's kind of the third pillar of exercise as well. And especially going back to the blood types, Alison, that you mentioned earlier, if someone is an A blood type, they're going to especially want to be favoring more of that kind of quiet inner exercise, the yoga, the meditation, those. And I know that some of the yoga is more intensive and, more, I'm talking about more of the quieter form in the A blood type example I'm giving. But between those three pillars, you've kind of covered off a lot of the basics of exercise. And any other, your final point there on sun gazing, I can get to that, or you can, Alison, unless you have another point.
Yep, just to say that when I was capturing elements for this particular slide, I was thinking of things that people can do indoors, because in some cases, if it's because we treat patients all over the world, Europe, Asia, North America, Australia, South Africa, I was thinking of things that could be done in an indoor setting, because in some cases, people have been charged, by police for actually being out on non-essential activities. So I was trying to make sure that I didn't kind of talk about so much stuff that's can be done outside. If you have access to outside and clean air, I don't recommend myself pace for, down a Toronto or Chicago street, New York City, because you're breathing in a whole lot of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. So the idea being is that what can we do at home? And if you're an O blood type, as Jeff was mentioning adroitly, is that, yes, you're right, jump rope, dancing, running on the spot, jumping jack. Sometimes too, it's very frustrating to be, stuck inside during a pandemic. Exercise is a great way to express some of that emotion. I find sometimes I have to have a good yell. So, I'll do my exercise and, pretend I'm doing karate chops and, give myself a good opportunity just to pull that anger out of my belly on my voice. Deep breathing is brilliant. Sun gazing for the pineal gland really is that at sunrise and sunset, you have about 20 minutes as the sun is either retreating on the horizon or coming up on the horizon, to be able to actually stare at the sun. The pineal gland is the mother of all glands in the body, and it regulates the entire endocrine system. So, of course, that includes, your adrenals, also your thyroid, your sex organs as well. The idea being is to stare at the sun. Some people have been doing that and actually not even eating food for 20 years. They're called sun gazers. Not that we recommend that, but certain yogis have that capacity. So just to letting you know how powerful sun gazing is for balancing your pineal gland.
You mean if those solarians, Alison, they'd be even more boring than I am at a party?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's good to know that there is such a category of people in the world.
That's awesome. So just a footnote, because some of you are asking if the slides will be available afterwards. If you're not able to see the slides, it's because your internet connection is not ideal. The whole presentation in utter clarity will be available after our presentation. So don't worry about that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll take maybe a week or so, but yeah, we'll have a full transcription, slides, and it'll be a very nice, a pretty package you can go back and look at.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is awesome. So where are we at? Oh yes, the all-important sleep. If we have water and food and exercise and all the good stuff. So what about sleep? What's that all about?
Yeah. Well, sleep, you need about 9 to 10 hours in the winter on average. During the summer, spring months, more 8 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep. And people might be thinking right now, oh my gosh, like I'm on the internet till midnight, and I get maybe 5, maybe 6, or the baby's up at night nursing. Some of these things can't be helped. Some of them can be. What we know, though, is flashing blue lights. Television is very disruptive to the pineal gland and all of our endocrine system, and it can actually cause our nervous system to be kind of buzzing and alive, and be very difficult to get to sleep. The ideal is to have 8 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep, be in a very dark room with blackout curtains. So, staying over at your boyfriend or girlfriend's in their basement in high school was actually a good way to sleep, because it was really dark. So reduce the blue light exposure in the evenings if you can. People who, we live in a tiny house in Canada in the summer, and we don't actually use electricity in the evenings. We have candles, beeswax candles, or even a lamp on in the evening, just to start to coast into sleep and allow our nervous systems to calm down so that we can transition into that 8 or 9 hours easily. We always say it's better not to eat after 5 or 6 o'clock, because what happens in the evening is that your body will wake you up around 3 a.m. Or you'll sleep very lightly, because that's called liver time. So you actually don't want to be digesting in your sleep in the middle of the night. Practicing a little bit of interval fasting, not eating from 5 or 6 the evening before, and then not eating till 10 or 11 or even noon the next day, actually gives your body a really good chance to metabolize and detox from toxins that you've taken in from the day before. So hot bath and Epsom salts in the evening. Like you, maybe you're an EQ like me, and I'm very hyped up on the extra work that I've been doing during this pandemic to look after patients, the long hours we've spent in clinic online. I can be angry and volatile over somebody infringing on my basic rights, liberties, and freedom. And so I need a hot bath in Epsom salts just to help me to, really transition into sleep. Thank you for the banner, hon. I appreciate that.
I'm doing simultaneous translation.
IQs actually often will need a hot bath too, but they are the types of people that more internalize. Jeff, you said it so beautifully the other day. EQs will emote their rage and anger, while IQs will actually crumble over time. And so, yeah, these are very trying times for all of us. And so, yeah, a hot bath is absolutely brilliant. An evening meditation to visualize. Often I do this before bed or in the evening, as I'll find a time just to visualize what my life feels like, enjoy, and visualizing, a sense of that liberty. Sometimes I visualize that I'm in a Jeep with my kids, and we're laughing, and we're so excited that, we're heading to the beach. I often will hold that visualization in my mind during a meditation, and I feel that it really calms me down a lot, and that I transition to sleep much easier if I don't have all the, Kabul or deep state or, the issues from this pandemic rolling through my mind before bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very nice. And another thought I'm having as I listen to some of the tips you're giving and everything, Ellie, is again, going back to our opening slide on the 3 jurisdictions: regimen, medicine, education. Obviously, good sleep begins with regimen. Getting the right number of hours and reducing the light exposure at night, and the devices, and all these things are regimen. To help regulate your hormones and how all the sleep rhythms happen in the first place. But there are 2 other jurisdictions that have a bearing on sleep. It's occurring to me to say this. that some people sleep like they're doing everything right. They're going to bed at the right hour, and they don't have their laptop on much into the evening, and all these kinds of things. That they're the perfect they have the perfect sleep habits, let's say. But let's say something else is disturbing their system, whether that's again something temporary, like the work we're doing as we go through clearing a certain timeline event for them, or let's say even at the highest level, at the third level of therapeutic education, or the area of truth. Let's say somebody, I'm just making this up, but let's say somebody has some kind of life belief that they don't have any value in the world unless they're being productive 24/7, right? The idea, let's say they grew up in a family or something like that, where the idea of rest, recreation, anything like that was considered taboo. So what's happened for that person, let's say, this imaginary person, let's say that they now, their whole physiology doesn't even believe that sleep is good for them or that it's bad for them. And they have to keep driving themselves and thinking about work, doing different things like that. So yeah, so we can start crossing into all three of the jurisdictions when we're trying to help someone get into the optimal kind of sleep situation for themselves.
I love your pet rooster. Did you just get him?
Yeah, speaking of good night's sleep, you need a rooster to get you up in the morning, right? But that's the myth I've learned is a myth, is that yeah, roosters don't only crow in the morning. That's not true. Okay, so here we are. Alison, unless you had anything to add on the previous slide, I can go back, but we have some more specific sleep supplements. And well, what do you want to do, Alison? I could read some of what you have here on the slide, or vice we can go back and forth. But ginkgo biloba, the first one, yeah.
If I'm in a talk like this or a webinar, what I do is I just bring my phone up and take a picture
Okay.
of what's being said, if that's something that really interests me, as opposed to having to go through all of each one of them. Just to say that there are natural herbs, valerian is one that I've also used myself. Ginkgo, glycine, and magnesium, of course, is responsible for over 600 reactions within the body. So we hike a lot here. We're at 6,500 feet above sea level in Guanajuato, Mexico, and I'm often running up in the mountains for a good, couple of hours. I belong to a hiking club here, and so I can get leg cramps, calf cramps, if I'm dehydrated, and also because I'm at a higher altitude, the oxygen is much thinner. So just to keep your eye on magnesium levels in your body, because the soils are very depleted of magnesium, especially. So, and it has, like I say, a huge number of response and reactions in the body. So just to keep an eye there. Amino acid, lavender, I have a vial. They grow lavender here in Mexico where we live, and we have the most beautiful lavender essential oil here. And I will, it comes in a little roller ball, and I will give that a little sniff before bed, and it just helps a lot for me to transition into sleep easily.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Now, we've touched on this a little bit here and there with some of the other slides, Alison, but yeah, you have your nice list you've crafted here. And there's a lot of fairly straightforward suggestions you're making, from meditation to comedy to other forms of positive shows, uplifting movies, things like that, positive speakers. The whole realm of self-education, hobbies, and so on. And Alison, anything you would particularly highlight? Like, again, if you want to talk from the extrovert side of the equation, about anything that there's a lot about the lockdown has kind of been in a sense, it's like in the optimal situation for introverts. I mean, it's not optimal for anyone ultimately, but yeah, a lot of the indoor activities and things like that. But from your side, Alison, what would you say is a little bit of the kind of the personal angle you've taken on this?
Well, and I think it's important to bring some of these things into your life if you've not done them as coping strategies for now. But somebody who has meditated for 40 years, like myself, I was competing as a swimmer as a kid, and it was kind of at the pre-Olympic level. So it was really important to maintain your times. I held a record for breaststroke in Ontario as a kid. And so it was, I had a competitor coming in from another part of the country, and I was really freaked out, and I was having, diarrhea and a lot of anxiety. So my parents actually arranged for me and them actually to start transcendental meditation, which was amazing. Again, it was the 70s, so it wasn't thought that you put your kid on drugs at that time. And so this is something I've always done. So it's no different for me to go into a circumstance like this where I feel like my life has been squeezed into a vice. But meditation, where I used to do it once or twice a day, I'm now up to probably 3 or 4, just, because it helps me really recenter myself. And that's some days that I do it 3 or 4 times. We listen to comedy, Jeff and I love, laugh out loud. We will watch some Netflix. We love Michael McIntyre. And if you've not seen Michael McIntyre go to the dentist, I swear to God, you will fall off your couch or your bed or wherever you are. Funniest thing I've ever seen. So yeah, just find, if it's kids, in their teens, Mr. Bean is great. Really important that we laugh. It helps us to actually scientifically get the diaphragm really moving, to pull out the rage, the anger, the fear, even guilt, shame, resentment out of our bellies. So this is actually really important, and scientifically, we don't talk enough about how the diaphragm is a trampoline in your belly, and it will help move rage and anger out of your system. So we will watch uplifting movies. We will sometimes watch documentaries. We were up last night listening to the rebroadcast of David Wilcox. He's somebody that I've read about for, many years. And he's helped a lot kind of stabilize my, fears and concerns at this time. So he's a positive speaker for me.
Yes.
Educate yourself about what's really going on. The world needs your help right now. And in many cases, that's educating others about what's truly the phenomenon going on at this time. And I won't get into that whole area at this juncture. Hobbies and crafts. I have a company on the side that sews garments. I help mentor in the States. And so sewing, something that takes you out of the realm of the difficulties in your life, perhaps. I have patients that turn wood on a lathe. I study Spanish on the side as well. Play with your kids. Oh my gosh, that's the best thing. Toss a ball. Balloon games are so much fun. You can't get the balloon. It's not allowed to touch the ground. Big fun. Reading to them in the big bed, cuddled up. It's awesome. Set up an online business. So I've set up a t-shirt business about t-shirts that have liberty slogans on it because I've been so pissed off. I need outlets to let that anger go. And so, great t-shirts, that really speak to people who have, like Anne Frank and other people that have been subject to slavery during history. Ms. Tubman, I've quoted on a t-shirt. So that's the idea, is don't allow yourself to feel trapped under tyranny. The idea being is be resourceful, figure out where you are and what you need, and create passive sources of income. You're not as trapped as they would like you to think. And so how do you create freedom and autonomy and liberty even in the circumstances that you're in? So, and again, just to reiterate, drink water, eat, sleep well, and exercise as those 4 basic cardinal points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, Allison. That was awesome. Okay, well, yeah, so let's, this is interesting, again, to me personally. If you look back at my history, even before I started studying homeopathy, the first thing I entertained as a study first was the Bach flower remedies. Now, some of you may be intimately familiar with these. Some of you may just have a casual awareness. At a minimum, if people know even something about them, they will have heard of the first one I have on my slide here, which is the rescue remedy. I'll get into the individual remedies in a moment, but actually it was in the 1930s thereabout. I'm not remembering my dates precisely at the moment, but Dr. Edward Bach from England, he was a trained homeopath, but he went off and he kind of designed this whole separate system of remedies, kind of similar to, but distinct and separate from the homeopathic way of prescribing. And he, in his life, he developed, well, in his mind, these were a complete set. He developed 38 of these flower remedies, and each one of them was for a very specific, whether emotional state or even a personality challenge, like someone who's either overly dominant, let's say, or some certain personality traits. Excuse me. He developed 38 of these that apply to a whole variety of these personality traits and emotions and so on. And I picked out a handful of them that I thought might be particularly useful for anyone dealing with the lockdown and everything else that's going on. As I say, there's a full set of 38. Feel free to explore all of them. But I just for examples, the first one I plucked out was the rescue remedy. As I mentioned, if anyone even has a beginning of awareness of the Bach flower remedies, that's the one they would have heard of. A lot of people may carry that in their glove compartment or their purse or their first aid kit or something like that. And it's good for general anxiety states, after effects of shock, etc. I'll go through these fairly quickly, but the mimulus is for specific concrete fears, like when you know what you're afraid of. You're afraid of a specific thing that's you're afraid might happen, or also it can be for people who are timid. Whether it's something like they have to do public speaking and they have kind of stage fright, something like that. It can be those kinds of concrete fears. And compare that with the next one is aspen. And as I say, that has vague fears of unknown origin. So it's almost like they can kind of feel something shifting in the air in their environment or whatever, but they don't really know what it is that's kind of spooking them out. And some people are kind of very sensitive that way. They feel other energies, other people, other beings and things like that. So the aspen can come in that kind of state. The red chestnut is another fear or anxiety remedy, and that's more specific to being concerned for your family, your friends, the people around you, the people close to you in your life. And again, of course, that's the nature of love and friendship and everything. We care and love for other people, but that's that red chestnut state that really starts to kind of overdrive our thoughts, where we really can't let it go, whatever the concerns and the worries are. The next one is called gorse, and that's about hopelessness, feel like giving up. It's pretty self-explanatory. The next one is called agrimony, and I describe that here as hiding your true feelings behind a mask of happiness, helpful to get in touch with your authentic self-expression. So again, for anyone who has more of the tendency to bottle things up, that's a super helpful remedy. And again, in our current kind of a lockdown situation, but more generally as well. Sweet chestnut, I call that at the end of your emotional rope or a deep spiritual crisis. So again, based on talking with our patients the last few weeks, we certainly know any number of people are kind of on the edge of a state like that. And the last one I put on this list is called willow. That's the willow tree, of course. It's a relatively well-known plant or tree. And that has the feeling or the state of mind of being resentful for your misfortune, feeling bitter, feeling self-pity, it's feeling like, why me or poor me, something like that. So yeah, let's say these are the examples I pulled out. There are 38 in all. Feel free to look those up. I think actually, if I remember, we have a resource on our website. I can't remember if we have all 38 on our website, or I can't remember all the things I've written in our blogs. I don't even remember how much detail I've gone into on the Bach flower remedies, but we have something on our website. Let me leave it at that. So, okay, so yeah, so there's a nice picture of me and Allison. And it's funny, we realized that it's almost impossible to find a picture of me without a hat. But actually, I don't even have that hat anymore. I have a black hat now. But so yeah, so anyway, so all joking aside, so a little bit, and this harkens back as well, if you think back to our 3 jurisdictions, regimen, medicine, education, how can we help? But of course, this is, we've kind of touched on many important things, but I'll just briefly go through this. We have the tailored regimen support. So we've talked about a lot of the regimen, but then there's a lot of individualized factors that come up, matching to, we've kind of mentioned a little bit about the blood types. There's some other body types that we take into account. And anyways, tailoring all those things at a more individual level is something we've done a lot and helped people a lot with that. Getting into the, mostly into the second jurisdiction is where we'd fit this in, the specific emotional support for feeling upset or even traumatized. Of course, some of those Bach flower remedies I just went through would have a role to play there. Although, technically speaking, the Bach flower remedies belong to the first jurisdiction of regimen, not to medicine. That's a whole other explanation. I can give it another time in another context, but just for those who like the details, there's a detail. And the final point here, the regular medical support specific to circumstances, such as homeopathic remedies for the latest strain of coronavirus. We've been doing a lot of specific immunizations for people, any concerns with radiation, 5G, oxygen deprivation, altitude sickness. Again, a lot of the specific difficulties that our bodies are going through, any of these kinds of toxins and other things, or basically whatever someone's particular environment or circumstances are. Once we get into remedies specific to what they need. So I will I'll just leave this last slide up for the moment. I'm going to actually start going back now through the questions. There's a whole lot of that have come through.
Yep, you do that.
Yep.
And I just want to say that Heilkunst and homeopathy has been around for about 225 years. We have the data as a result from cholera, scarlet fever. One of the biggest and most recent ways that homeopathy has been applied is in Cuba for several million people who were suffering 70,000 cases every spring due to leptospirosis. This is a bacterial strain that comes every year in Cuba due to the flooding, and it was causing fatalities every year. Cuba, as you know, is not a country that accesses U.S. Allopathic medicine. So they were looking for really cheap alternatives, and guess what they ran into? Well, the nosode for leptospirosis. So they've been taking the homeopathic nosode for many, many years now, and we have the data back, which is absolutely brilliant from our perspective, because overnight, literally, and I have the data on this, they went from 70,000 cases to 0. So we have the antidote. We have curative principles. We're not just, supplying remedies for people to, address allergies or hemorrhoids or whatever it is. We're able to actually deal easily with scourges, pandemics. It's not an issue. Now, we have been treating cases around the world. We have patients in Italy and Spain, New York City, and places where the pandemic has been much more significant and where it hit the hardest. And so we have treated patients in those areas of the world with great success. So please know there is, and there are other options that are tried and true, that it's not the time, again, during a recent pandemic to go, well, maybe this supplement, or maybe like we actually have the data that we have had, like I say, since Dr. Samuel Hahnemann's time. He was born in 1755 in Germany. So we have that data from homeopaths over the years to be able to really speak to why our testimonials, pages and pages of success stories over the last 20 years that really speak to it being for those we've served the best decision we've ever made, that Sarah talks about in the first testimonial here.
Alison, I'm just actually going to put you and I back on screen again, bring our cameras back up, and I'll start. Actually, I'll let you continue if you wanted to make a further point here, Alison, but just so you know where we're headed next, I'll start getting into the questions once we wrap up anything formal here.
Yeah, with pleasure. The other thing that you may not know about Heilkunst treatment is that in Heilkunst, we work differently than most homeopaths. While we use the homeopathic principle, we take people like an onion and we strip the emotional and physical shocks off in the order in which they've assumed them. This is important. It's called the law of succession of forces. And what this means is that disease is layered like an Italian wedding cake, which means that you really have to start with the issue that was the most traumatic at the present and work your way back like a geological dig down to the root cause. The root causes will be on the timeline, those traumas that we use the homeopathic principles to resolve for people. Getting back to birth. And then we have 8 genetic miasms, which are really the root cause for all chronic disease. So the lovely thing is that we're able to get the highest, resolution to chronic disease that we know of. Somebody mentioned earlier, and I go, Jeff, you can go after those questions, but they were saying they had kind of a mouthful of mercury and gold caps and such. The detoxification process is important, and that's also one of the jurisdictions that we offer our patients. Heavy metal detox. We've done heavy metal and even vaccine detox for the past 20 years. My son was vaccine damaged, which brought me to Heilkunst in the first place. That free book is offered online as well. So we have tons of resources, and like I say, we've not had one that our 3 jurisdictions have treated. We have not had one case, that we've just thrown our hands up in 20 years and said, oh, can't do this one, doesn't fall within one of those jurisdictions.
Yeah, as I say, I'm waiting for that day when the 4th jurisdiction gets discovered and blows it all up. But yeah, so far so good. We're holding the 3. And let me actually double check. I know, you have our slide here on how to reach us. Of course, that's on our website. And yeah, so we have this final picture of all these people holding the question marks. I was joking with you, Alison. These are kind of B-level actors. I don't think they're doing the question face as well as someone could be doing it, but we'll take the picture anyways. And the question mark signs really kind of round it out for us.
Yeah.
So let me do that. I'm going to, what am I going to do here?
So just to address one of the questions, like people always ask, what particular supplement, how do I know if I need magnesium, for example? Magnesium for a person, if you have leg cramps, if you have issues with regards to inability to fall asleep easily, constipation actually can be an indication of low magnesium as well, headaches. But again, just to whip off, what are the typical symptoms? It could also be related, if you suffer any of those things, could be from a state of grief. So homeopathically, Natrum muriaticum is a remedy that if you take magnesium and it doesn't work, you may need Natrum muriaticum on the medical side because it's not the right jurisdiction, for example. So again, start with regimen. That's what we always say. That's what Dr. Samuel Hahnemann started with, 225 years ago. And then see if you qualify for homeopathic medicine on the law of cure like cures like, which can be the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That's a good framework, Alison, to realize that the the jurisdictions are distinct, as we've said, but they interact. So just as your example said, yeah, the medical aspect could interfere with what's going on in the nutritional, and it's not like this. This is what our intellects always want. Well, where's the simple answer?
Yeah.
Give me the black and white. Here's this. Let's just get the black and white answer, and let's get the right dose and everything. And there is an aspect of that. Yes, we can measure things, through live blood analysis, through hair analysis, through other symptoms. Through we can get all these various measurements of what's going on in someone's nutrition, magnesium specifically, or in their other nutritional factors in general. But you're right. If this is also where the three jurisdictions, as you beautifully put, we have to understand how they interact to really get the whole picture of what's going on.
And it even comes down to how much to supplement. I mean, like I say, I'm a avid hiker, and so I'll take 3 capsules of magnesium some days, but only 1 or 2, or miss a day, as well. So it kind of depends on your individual needs. But the baseline is follow the directions on the bottle, because every magnesium supplement will be different. I mean, it just depends on how many milligrams are in each capsule as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
What other questions do we have, hon?
Well, I'm going to pop this one up on the screen. This one came in now. As she said, it's not a specific COVID question, but I am going to take it here because we can use it for our context today. And it's a question basically about various. It's really getting into the question of holistic dentistry, right? Depending on where you live, if you're lucky, somewhere at least nearby, if not in the next town, or depending on where you are, that you can find and access a holistic dentist. And there's a whole world of things to talk about here. I just want to touch on a couple of key points, but this, in the general terms, if we talk about healthy living and detox and all the rest of it, a lot of the stuff that's been put into our mouths, dental-wise, dentist-wise, is the source of some of the greatest toxins that we bear in our life, right? Everything from the mercury fillings, she mentions the root canals, the gold tooth crowns, and so on. Yeah, there's a whole world of, again, we could probably do it, if not a whole video, a whole series just on the problems that dental work causes for people in the long run, as far as their immune system and all the rest. Now, I'll partially answer the intent of this question here. If someone cannot get to a holistic dentist, cannot afford to do the kind of work to get their mouth into a better state, and at a minimum, we recommend doing it slowly over time, just because of not disrupting things too quickly. But even at the most basic level, from someone being our patient, we use all the specific drainage and detox remedies. We've mentioned those earlier today, just to, if there are toxins on board in the system, just to keep those, keep the body in as detoxed of a state as possible. Given that that's a kind of a factor for the person, that's a medical issue. Of course, we have some regimental approaches to the detox. So yeah, we have, even within our first 2 jurisdictions, we already do a lot of work with that to really help people detox when they're suffering these issues. Now, as I say, as is possible over time, getting to a holistic dentist is really going to be the long-term solution for anyone, as soon as they're able to to keep some money aside over time and be able to do that. But yeah, as far as the Heilkunst side of it, we do kind of support on the detox side for quite a lot of these issues. Okay, so I am back to my little comment box here. I'm just plucking out the questions. We have a lot of nice, friendly, nice to see you, and all the friendly things.
Thank you so much, guys. I have to say, selfishly, you've really, warmed my heart today. I'm so excited to see you all. And just speaks to the long relationships that we've had over, and it's interesting, to see a friend that I've served, 3 generations of their family. And, I often say that I feel part of these families as a result. So thank you so much. The other thing to mention is, if you do want the free book, The Path to Cure, it's at thepathtocure.com/bonus. And that's a free audiobook. You can have that. And it was published in 2000, early 2000, 2004, I think. And so we did a 10-year version. that actually catches you up on what has happened, to my son Jordan after he came out of the spectrum. Yeah, and really lets you see what is possible with Heilkunst principles.
Mm-hmm. So let me see. I am back to what I was looking for the questions. Oh yeah, so we have here. This is actually from our colleague Kathy Bradley,
Yeah.
and
Hey,
wow,
Kathy.
it's a big enough comment. I have to perk myself up to be seen over the video here. But basically, what she's saying here is, yeah, we've kind of been through it all between the SARS, the H1N1, the H1H5, the blah 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 blah. The list goes on and on. Yeah, and that's, as I say, like I said at the beginning, we always have our assurance of the principles. They stay solid. The law of gravity stays solid. The law of cure stays solid. And yeah, the next pandemic will come, the next crisis will come, and the principles will still be there. So there you are. So yeah, I appreciate that comment, Kathy. But yeah, it really speaks to this this general idea that we don't have to make it up from scratch every time and run around in panic like most people do. But we have something in our back pocket to pull out every time that applies to whatever the new thing is. What's that expression? There's nothing new under the sun. But once you understand the world of principles, there is nothing new under the sun. Of course, details are new, but let me, too many buttons to push here. Let me get rid of that banner. Let me see here. Yeah, lots of nice comments about the rooster and the birds. Okay, so this is a comment, and these obviously came through as we were going through the different slides, so it seems a little bit out of context now because we weren't stopping for every comment as we went. But yeah, this is a question about pH balanced water, and I do know we see that in the health food stores and so on. You can buy these special pH balanced waters. They're at they mark the number on them, which pH level each product is at. And I know, Alison, you've been trying some of those yourself. And yeah, that's fine. It reminds me of what Alison was saying earlier. It's beneficial, and you want to partake in that if you have access and so on. But ultimately, in the purest sense, we want to get to a source of water that as far as the ideal would be being on an artesian well, that where the water bubbles up from deep down in the earth, and you get these natural earth forces and these levity forces that are bubbling up in the water, of course, free of the toxins and everything. So most of us don't have that, right? We don't live by that artesian well. So we come into these secondary solutions, whether it's the pH bottled water, other filter systems. There's a whole world of things to explore there. But yeah, the pH bottled water in itself is it's a good step along this whole path. I certainly would, if that's something you do have access to and it's one of your better choices, I would certainly be considering
that. Yep. So yes, we actually, if you think about it, Jeff and I have been living in a state of lockdown for 7 years as digital nomads. I joke about it because we both each live out of one suitcase. And so we don't actually bring a lot of clothes or a lot of secondhand stores here in both Canada and Mexico. So we just get rid of stuff and give it to, the women's shelter here before we leave. And then we buy some more clothes in Canada for next to nothing. And so it kind of supports the local economy. The other thing that we do specifically is we carry pH strips just to check and see what our pH levels are at. These are the term, if you're older than I am, which probably a lot of you are not, it's called litmus paper, and you pee on the strip and it'll tell you what your pH levels are. You want to be in around the high, like 6.8, 6.9, 7. If you start to get up higher than 7.5, then you are actually suffering something as bad as acidosis. It's called alkalosis. So you don't want to be too alkaline either. And so we're able to help you on that realm, that really to get you back into that state of grace, again, through food, through medicine, and through therapeutic regimen, the 3 jurisdictions. Kathy Bradley, our colleague, is written a question. Are you open to discussing EMF support? I don't know. The reason being is we can give homeopathic remedies, that's for sure. But we know a lot of physicians, scientists, and other individuals are being suppressed on, let's say, YouTube, FBI books. Sorry, did I say that? I mean, Facebook, with regards to talking about 5G. So yes, we do have remedies to be able to help people with EMF, whether past, present, or future. And so yes, just because we don't want this video torn down, we can help people with electromagnetic fog. So just, yeah, to be a little bit sketchy about that, but yes. Okay.
Okay, so we have, this is a very specific question on supplements, and it's about the dosage of nascent iodine. My general instruction would be, I mean, each brand is going to be slightly different. So start with the dosage on the bottle, how many drops per day or whatever it says. But that, yeah, speaking of drops, that's how we tend to take it, whatever the number of drops is in a small amount of water to drink it. I mean, it's an incredibly overpowering strong taste if you just took it directly on your tongue. Like it makes you shudder kind of taste. It really
like battery acid, isn't it, Jeff?
Like battery acid, or as Allison, as you're fond of saying, it's something that would put hair on your chest. But yeah, so start with the dosage on the bottle, but yeah, then based on other individual factors, we will adjust for that individual person and getting into the medicine, getting into the other issues connected with that. But yeah, as I say, start pretty simply with what it says on the bottle.
Yeah, brilliant. So we are hanging out on minds.com. That is an open, really it replaces FBI book. I mean, sorry, I keep making the mistake. Facebook. So come over to minds.com, look me up, A. McQuinn, Jeff, you're at J. Corantere, I believe. Yep, the vaccination myth, again, oh my gosh, did I say that? Has migrated over from FBI, yeah, geez, I can't stop myself. Facebook over to minds.com. Come and get the latest there. We will be openly discussing things that we don't openly discuss in other more tyrannous places. So yeah, you're awesome with those banners. God, I couldn't love you more. Like, really.
It's my new toy.
I know. You're awesome. All right. So if there are no other questions, I bid you adieu.
I think there may have been a couple of others. I was just still scrolling through.
Yeah, okay.
I just, sorry, I do have a lot of scrolling to do, so excuse me a second.
Yeah, we have one question I can see is influenzinum one of the first remedies you would take if you think you got the COVID? As a Heilkunstler, you always take what you have, right? And I remember
the closest you can come, basically.
Right, exactly. Because we're working on the basis of simillimums. And I remember this, after 4 years of our medical degrees, if I hadn't heard that a million times, take what you have, use what you have. And yes, that can be the closest. We have the actual no-sode. So if somebody needs, that, and that could be the second step. But influenzinum is a great place. If you have a 200 CH, a 30 CH in a kit at home, go for it, especially a elderly person or a child for absolute sure. That's a good place to go. So thank you for asking the question, Caroline.
And just to augment that as well, yeah, we radionically, we have the COVID-19, and that's what we've been using for, from our individual immunizations we've been doing for people. But yeah, you're right, the influenzinum will be close enough if that's what you have. So
yeah, and all EMFs. And why this is important in the research that we've done, and maybe Kathy, this is what you want me to kind of hint at, is that people that have in certain large cities in the world where they are not following the curve, a typical scourge or pandemic, what we know from measles, mumps, rubella, scarlet fever, it goes up one side and comes down another. You know, it levels off. And around the world, we've clearly plateaued to this particular and are coming down the other side. They're starting to open up, you know, cities and provinces and states now as a result. So the thing is, though, is that I know there's going to be another so-called pandemic. And don't freak out. You're going to be okay. It doesn't have anything to do with COVID, though. It has more to do with EMFs. And this is important to know that because we love and care for you and our patients, we have dropper bottles of drainage and organ support for EMFs. So if they put that, you know, those towers up that everybody's talking about in different cities while we've been on lockdown, and children's schools and hospitals, what that newer EMF does is it enable, there's your favorite song, honey. What happens is, that's the gas truck locally here in Mexico, makes that pretty little song. I always think it's ice cream, but it's, you know, propane tanks. What happens is that it gives the illusion, a very real illusion, that somebody has suffered altitude sickness. This is how it shows up. The blood's not able to absorb or receive oxygen. So if you go to the local hospital, the problem is you're put on a ventilator. They're having more fatalities as a result in places like New York, Madrid, Italy, places that have already booted up that next level in electronic smog. So we have a combination of remedies that include oxygen and include the homeopathic remedy coca, which actually I devised with a colleague of ours in New Zealand, Heidi, which really enables us to treat the true phenomenon that's going on with why the body's not able to absorb oxygen, why the physicians out of New York State are saying right now that, oh my gosh, this isn't like any virus we've ever seen in the history of the world. It looks like somebody has suffered oxygen deprivation, that you've opened the doors of a plane at 30,000 feet, or you've dropped them at the base camp in Everest without any acclimatization. So we know this, just to tell you, we know this. We've been hot on the tracks. And like I say, I've been crazily up till 2 o'clock in the morning most nights trying to figure this out with blue lights flashing. And no, I have not been sleeping well as a result. So yeah, lots of remedies for sure. And so the idea being is that we are prepared, and we are prepared because we have done this research and because we get to work in the realm of simillimums. We are shipping remedies out from our practice to our patients, and we are booked well into late May and June. So just to know that we are busy, and this is what we're busy with.
Okay, well, as we can hear by that song in the background, it's they're trying to tell us that the show is coming to an end.
Yeah, that's awesome.
we will. I guess I'll keep the camera on for another minute, give or take. I know there is a delay between when we talk versus when you guys hear us on the other end. So in case someone's typing a question or anything, we will be here for a little bit. But yeah, we probably are coming to the end.
Yeah,
and,
I'm going to go put on my play clothes because I'm going out for a big hike up in that mountain over there. I've got 3,000 feet to play with today. So thank you all for attending. Like I say, it's just I'm so excited and happy to see you all. And thank you for bringing your great questions and spending this full 90 minutes with us. We didn't expect it would go this long, but thank you so much for your time. And we love you, and we'll always take very good care of you. If you do contact the clinic, maybe you can flash up that page again, sweetie, with regards to the contact information.
Which one do you mean?
2 slides back had a 1-800 number and.
Right. There it is. Let me find the right slide.
There we go.
Yeah, and I'll say one last comment. I just see some of the last comments coming up. Yeah, we have been doing a number of different videos and presentations lately. So please, even if it's a totally different topic, put your question in the comments, and we will incorporate that into a future presentation. Some we may combine together if they go together, or we might just do whole presentations on one topic or one question. And yeah, we love seeing you all today. It was it's kind of put a lot of light into our day. Just to, I know I'd like to see you all physically and have the hugs and all the rest of it, but this is certainly a nice substitute for where we're at.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye for now.